Hello YouTube, welcome to episode 56 of the Card Combo Show with me, Chocobilly, where we look at the weird, wonderful card combinations in the Final Fantasy TCG. Another week, another different backdrop at the moment, so yeah, nothing to get used to. Anyway, this week I'm going to be looking at cards that cost only 1 CP, so no need to worry about having to stock up on those CP or cards in hand, because these are nice cheap cards with awesome effects. Alright, I'm going to be looking at Larkeicus, I don't know how to say the name, from Opus 13. Mateus the Corrupt from Opus 5, Asura from Opus 2, Materia from Opus 13, and Leo from Opus 13. Okay, first up we've got Larkeicus. So he's obviously a 1 CP backup fire. Larkeicus does not activate during your active phase, so there's that drawback to him being so cheap. And then when Larkeicus enters the field, choose one forward opponent controls, remove it from the game for as long as Larkeicus is on the field. So he's similar to Dorgan in that respect, that as long as he's there, that forward's removed, but the instant he disappears, that forward can come back onto the field. But yeah, ultimately, for 1 CP, a really good way just to be able to quickly nab something, get out of the way so you can push through. So something like RG is really good. So when RG is put from the field to the break zone, you can choose one backup of cost 1 in your break zone, play it onto the field. So maybe you're synergizing RG with something like 8 CP Kane, where you're putting RG into the break zone to make him only a 3 cost to bring him onto the field. And then you can also, putting RG into the break zone, bring out Larkeicus as well. So hopefully that combined RG, Larkeicus, Kane play gets rid of 2 things out of the way, ready for you to push through or just get things out of the field. Then you got Dorgan, as I said earlier. So when a backup enters the field, choose one forward as your opponent controls. Remove it from the game for as long as Dorgan is on the field. So you can play Larkeicus onto the field with Dorgan already there, and actually remove 2 of your opponent's forwards out of the way, which for 1 CP is really, really good. Obviously you do need to be careful, because if either Dorgan or Larkeicus disappears, then those forwards, one of those forwards will come back. But remember, if a forward is already on the field, so let's say you removed a Cloud, and then your opponent later plays Cloud back onto the field, if Larkeicus or Dorgan were to be put from the field into the break zone, that Cloud would try to re-enter, see that it can't, and would then stay removed. So even at that point, it can't come back, and if Cloud then goes from the field at another point, it's not like this one's going to then enter at that point, that Cloud is then removed permanently. Sid FFBE. So let's say you take into account the fact that that forward's going to re-enter, but it doesn't matter. So when a forward of your opponent enters the field, deal it 2,000 damage. If the forward entered play without paying for its CP cost, deal it 9,000 damage instead. So obviously you need to be careful of the fact that when it's entering the field, if it's got any entry effects, you want to be careful of that. But ultimately, if it's a 9k forward or less, it'll come onto the field, Sid FFB will see it and be like, well, you didn't pay for that, so he deals at 9k and nukes it off the face of the planet. Sid Randall, similar sort of thing, but let's say your opponent's, the forward would re-enter and have a nasty effect. Larkeicus disappears, maybe you're breaking Larkeicus for your own effect to then bring that forward back in, it then won't have a entry effect at all, which is good. Now, a couple of episodes ago, I made a mistake. Sid Randall and Sid FFB do not work together. So, Sid Randall actually affects any forwards that are affected by another forward entering the field. So Sid FFB would try and see that forward. Sid Randall will say, no, you aren't triggered by this, and so Sid FFB isn't triggered. So you need to be careful with something like that. So if you're happy to have like your opponent's forward re-enter and you think it's going to combo with Sid FFB, it won't if you have Sid Randall, so be warned. But either way, Sid Randall stopping an entry effect from a forward entering from Larkeicus dying is still decent. Then you got Sid 2, so just dull, search one backup cost 1, add it to your hand. That's perfectly fine. And again, if you're combining Sid 2 with Sid FFBE, because they are of the same element, it means that you're able to remove things, and then when Larkeicus dies, they come in, they can die, and then you can use Sid 2 again to set yourself another Larkeicus if you want, and then play it again. So it's a good way to keep on milling things out of your opponent's field, and just get things out of the way. Mira, so this is an interesting little play. So obviously Larkeicus says that he does not activate during your active phase, which kind of sucks. But Mira has the dull effect of choose one category FFTCG character other than forward you control, activate it. Until the end of the turn, it also becomes a forward with 8,000 power. So that's pretty funny, because obviously, let's say your opponent doesn't have any forwards, you can use Mira to activate Larkeicus and attack with him, but also, even though he is a forward now, he is still a backup, so you can use Mira just to activate your Larkeicus to then use him for CP. Northstalin can search you any FFCC backup, so just go search the Larkeicus, play him, remove forward. Nice and simple. And next up we've got Asura, so a really good summon in my opinion. 1 CP, wind, Select one of the 3 following actions. Choose up to 2 forwards, activate them. Choose up to 5 backups, activate them. Or choose 1 character card of cost 2 or less in your break zone, add it to your hand. So 3 just decent effects. So Hope. Obviously, Hope's got the great effect of when an active character opponent controls becomes... That's the wrong effect, sorry. When a dull character you control becomes active due to your summons or abilities, choose up to 2 characters you control, activate them. So obviously using Asura means that you can reactivate all your backups, and then if you've got 2 forwards, you can activate those as well. Similarly, you can activate 2 forwards, and you can also activate 2 backups as well if you wanted. Whatever works better for you, really. Maybe you've got lots of backup effects that you want to use, or maybe you just want to activate some forwards to be able to use them. You know, it's whatever works best. Kryl. Now, obviously, you can use Asura to get Kryl back to hand, which is super useful, or you can just play Kryl onto the field and using Asura from the break zone. Now, obviously, be warned, because when you use Kryl's ability, you do have to pay the correct element. Now, thankfully, Kryl's on Earth, which means that, you know, it's multi-element, so there's plenty of easy ways to be able to get the correct element, but still, be warned. But yeah, ultimately, be able to cast Asura from your break zone just to be able to pay 1 dull Kryl to reactivate all your characters, or sorry, all your backups, or, you know, reactivate Kryl and then another forward if you wanted. That's pretty decent as well. But yeah, be able to just shadow cast Asura out of the break zone, and maybe your opponent's completely forgotten about it. I think that's pretty decent. Bismarck, Lord of the Mists. So, you can dull a wind forward using Bismarck, and that includes himself as well, to be able to deal 2,000 damage to a forward. So you could say you've got Bismarck on the field, dull Bismarck, dull another forward, deal a total of 4k to 1 forward, cast Asura to activate Bismarck and another forward, then you can do it again to deal another 4k to that forward, so a total of 8k, which is perfectly fine. Now, you can combine this with something like Ixali, so when a job when a wind job primal enters your field, activate Ixali, which is perfectly fine, but then a wind and dull, choose on forward, activate it. You can only use this ability if you control a wind job primal. If you combine this with the likes of Hope as well, it means that you could reactivate all your backups, including Ixali, and then reactivate Bismarck and maybe another wind forward as well. Well, I guess Hope, potentially. But yeah, being able to dull your forwards to be able to deal damage, and then using something like Ixali to reactivate them, dull them again, then you cast Asura to reactivate your Ixali, and again, if you've got Hope, your forwards, you can then dull Bismarck and Hope. You can then use Ixali to then reactivate them and just keep on pinging damage everywhere. Materia. I love this card. I haven't had a real chance to play around with it too much, but ultimately, 2 ice, 1 colorless, and a dull. Remove the top card of your deck from the game. If the card's cost is 4 or less, you may cast it without paying the cost this turn. So chances are you probably want to be running a deck where this card fits in nicely, so no cards over 4 CP, but ultimately it casts it, which is excellent. But also that means it can also play summons as well. Now you want to be careful, because obviously if there are duplicates in your deck, then that's going to be kind of sucky if you try to cast a forward that's already on your field. Same for backups as well. But ultimately, say your opponent goes to end their turn, you cast Asura to activate all your backups, you then use Materia to reveal top card, oh look, it's a forward, comes onto your field at the end of their turn, at which point that forward will be ready to attack on the following turn, not to mention it might have an excellent entry effect as well. Okay, Materia. So a light forward, you can play 2 or more light characters onto the field. When Materia enters the field, you may pay X. When you do so, search for 1 light forward of cost X and play it onto the field. When a light forward other than Materia you control is put from the field to the break zone, draw 1 card. This effect will only trigger once per turn. So she's only a 2k forward, super easy to kill, but ultimately she's got a fine effect. Now the reason I chose Materia over the likes of Spiritus is just that Spiritus gets a lot more play, and I feel like the plays for him are a lot more obvious. And there's just more fun, well, not more fun things, but there's other fun things you can do with something like Materia. So, Aerith. Obviously, when Aerith enters the field, you get to choose 2 category 7 characters in your break zone and add them to your hand. But also, she has an ability where she can break herself to then either choose 1 7 forward. You dull it, it gains this forward can't be broken until the turn, or just choose a dark forward and break it. But if you use Aerith's break ability with Materia on the field, you also get a card back to hand as well. So just by playing Aerith and Materia together means you get lots of cards to hand. Maya. So when a light or dark character is put from the character either player controls is put from the field to the break zone, choose 1 character other than light or dark in your break zone, add it to your hand. So this is also good because obviously Materia's effect doesn't trigger for herself, but it means that if Materia dies and Maya's on the field, you still get a card to hand. But ultimately, let's say you've got Maya, Materia, and Aerith. Aerith goes into the break zone, you then get 2 cards to hand through Maya and Materia's effect. Alright, Onion Knight. So play Materia into the field, you pay 2 to then just bring an Onion Knight. He's a nice little hasty, which will be good. But then ultimately you can use his pay 1 and dull to then put him back into your hand to then get another Onion Knight onto the field that may be more beneficial for you. Bartz. So the forwards of cost 1 you control gain haste, so that's pretty good. But also when Bartz forms a party and attacks, you may search for one forward of cost 1 and play it onto the field. So let's say you party attack Bartz and Boko together, you can then search a Materia, play that onto the field to then search any, well, you have to pay obviously, to then search any other light forward and play that onto the field. In the middle of your attack phase, might blindside your opponent and have some crazy effects. I mean, obviously you can go for something like Onion Knight, which is kind of funny because then obviously Bartz is entered, Materia will have haste, the Onion Knight will have haste as well, but you could also go for something big like Raise Velga as well. There's lots of cool cards that you can bring in. Maybe you want to go for Minerva, that'd be quite funny. Refia. So, when Refia enters the field, you may search one card named Arc, Ingus, or Luneth of cost 4 or less and play them onto the field. So this is good because obviously that she can play the new backups as well, so it means that you are able to have some consistency with your backups. But ultimately, you can play Materia onto the field, to then play Refia onto the field, to then play Arc, Luneth, or Ingus forwards onto the field, which is, you know, for paying a total of 6 CP just from the one Materia, pretty good. But ultimately, combine that with the likes of Lael. Lael's already on the field. Maybe he's been on their turn, so he's ready to attack. You play Materia, to then play Refia, to then play Ingus. Lael then becomes an 8k, a 9k forward, and you can attack with him, remove the 3 counters that he's gained from those 3 entering the field, and get to remove something from the game. Obviously, we've got a similar sort of play with Cagnosa as well. Obviously, it's a bit harder to get to his remove 7 water counters effect, but ultimately, you can get him to 3 counters to play Materia, Refia, Ingus, or Luneth, or Arc. And then you can minus AK to something as well. Mateus the Corrupt. Fine little 1 CP summon, choose one blocking forward, break it. Nice and simple. So, something like Cloud. It used to be, Begannon used to be one of the only forwards that could use this effect, but if your opponent, when Cloud attacks, choose one forward. It gains, if possible, this forward must block until the end of the turn. Choose a forward, has to block, they block, use Mateus to break it. Obviously, you can choose something that's bigger than Cloud and maybe more problematic. It has to block, Cloud would die to it, but then you use Mateus before the block happens, or not before the block happens, before the damage resolution happens, at which point Cloud won't take any damage. Mecha Chocobo. So this will be fun for a little bait. So when Mecha Chocobo attacks, choose one dull forward of cost 4 or less your opponent controls, break it. So that's a fine effect. But when Mecha Chocobo is blocked, break Mecha Chocobo. So that means your opponent's going to probably just leave something small up just to break it. You attack on Mecha Chocobo, they block. You then cast Mateus to actually break that forward. Now Mecha Chocobo will still die as well, but it's a good bait so your opponent's just going to be like, I'll just block with the forward I've got. And then if it is something bigger or more problematic, you cast Mateus and it dies as well. A nice trade for you if it's getting rid of something horrible. Ovalia. Now this is a bit of a weird one, but let's say during your opponent's attack phase, they attack with something and then you block. Now, maybe they're attacking with something small, well, that they're happy to, kill, so let's go with Porum, 2CP Porum to get some from their break zone. What you could do is block with a forward, and then cast Mateus on your own forward to break it, and then on the stack, use Ovalia to make that forward when it leaves the field, re-enters. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a weird way to go, and the chances are your opponent's not going to be attacking with something smaller that's going to die to your forward, because you'd only really need to use Mateus on your own forward when it isn't going to die. So, yeah, it would have to be in the case when your opponent's playing something they're happy to sack, effectively. But yeah, ultimately, you could maybe block with something big or something that has a really good re-entry ability. So let's go with 7 CP Sephi. Sephi leaves the field, comes back onto the field, makes your opponent discard 2 cards, which in the middle of their attack phase might blindside them and they won't know what to do. Flandit. So, another cool bait. You can dull and choose one forward opponent controls. If your opponent doesn't pay 1, it cannot attack or block this turn. They're like, well, I don't want to take the damage, so they pay the 1. You attack with something, they block, and then you cast Mateus, so it dies anyway. It's a nice way just to make sure that your opponent's value goes down a little bit, and you get rid of some of their backup abilities, maybe. But ultimately, you're able to break their forward even though they've paid for it. Ravana, Saviour of the Nath. So, Ravana can attack 4 times the same turn. It cannot gain Brave. If it's dealt damage, reduce damage by 5,000. And when a character is put from the field to the break zone, activate Ravana, Saviour of the Nath. But the problem with this is, let's say you attack with Ravana and your opponent's got a 10k blocker. They block with that 10k. That doesn't die. Ravana doesn't die because it takes 5,000 power less. So, nothing happens. That's where Mateus comes in. You can say, yeah, that 10k blocker, it's going to die anyway. Then Ravana stands back up and can attack again. So it's a good way to kind of blindside your opponent. Your opponent's go, this forward that can now attack again, and you got rid of one of their biggest attackers, or blockers even. And lastly, we have Leo. So when Leo enters the field, place 1 kingdom counter on Leo for each category FFTCG character you control. Pay 1 and dull. Remove X kingdom counters from Leo. Choose one forward other than card name Leo, light or dark in your break zone. If it is cost X, play it onto the field. You can only use ability during your turn and only once per turn. So Leo's super cheap, and his ability is super cheap as well. So basically, if your opponent invests at all in killing him, it's probably better value for you than it is for them. And it's so easy to get 5 backups in FFCC. Not to mention the fact you've got like the Noshtalan, I forget his name now, but there's so many good FFCC backups, and to be honest, most of the good ones in most elements that are of 2 CP or around that cost are FFCC. There's just so many good cards, so many good backups in this category. So really, getting Leo to 4-5 counters is not hard in the slightest, and he also counts himself, which is really, really good. But yeah, Bartz again. You attack with Bartz and, I don't know, party or something. You can then bring Leo in. Let's say you've got a fair few backups in the lineup. Leo gains 5, maybe 6 counters. He also now gains haste because Bartz give 1 CP forwards haste. You can then immediately use Leo's ability to get something from your break zone and play that onto the field as well. Maybe you're only paying 1 just to get more 1 CPs onto the field. That'd be quite hilarious. But it's a really, really useful effect. Naja Salahim, obviously you can double the counters that would be on Leo as well, and maybe Naja Salahim is party attacking, with Bartz. So then, actually, your opponent's got a lot to consider because Leo comes onto the field with Naja and thingy there. Leo can then use an effect, and then his counters will go back up when actually Naja deals damage to your opponent as well. Pavlov, when Pavlov enters the field, choose up to 2 characters choose up to 2 category FFCC characters other than Pavlov, activate them. So you could play Leo onto the field and then use his ability with only a few backups there, bring something on, then you play Pavlov to reactivate Leo, and another backup as well. You've now got the 1 CP to pay for Leo's ability to then use Leo again. Titan, Lord of Crag, so this is just good cards that Leo can bring in. It's not hard to get Leo to 7 counters, to be honest. Now obviously you will need to have 7 FFCC characters on the field when you play him, or use something like Naja Salahim, but really if you can even get 1 Naja Salahim off on Leo, that's excellent. And again, it's not too hard to get Leo to 7 counters just from playing him onto the field. But yeah, bringing in Titan to just wipe everyone's board and just get a reset is really useful. Ewan, when Ewan enters the field, choose 1 damage forward, break it. Nice and simple, and if you're on Lightning Earth, you probably have some way of picking something. But yeah, you just ping it, pay 1 to use Leo to bring Ewan onto the field. I mean, to be fair, Leo can bring something of any element anyway, so you could still be in Earth Wind and just use a Dancer or Penello or something to deal damage to your opponent's forwards, and then pay the 1 to bring Ewan out of your break zone onto the field and break that forward. Lani, it's always fun to replay Lani, so yeah, just having her in the break zone ready to come back in. You play Leo, you use Leo to bring in Lani, they get to steal your opponent's forward, you play that for cheat, well, your opponent's cards even. Yeah, just a fantastic pairing all around. Regis, so let's say you just go swinging with all your forwards, opponent blocks them all, they all die, play Leo to then play Regis back onto the field to then play those other forwards back onto the field. Simple, but nice. Alright, there we go, folks. What are some kind of categories or, you know, styles that you guys would like to see me cover in these videos? Because I'm starting to run out of ideas. No, I'm not really. But it's interesting every time I think of different kind of prerequisites to cover in these videos. And, you know, I'm getting to a point now where I'm thinking maybe I should start doing more just themed on games. The problem with that, though, is that the cards that you combo with those cards from a particular game don't necessarily tend to be from that game. So I did an episode on Final Fantasy VIII, for example, but not many of the cards I was comboing with were from Final Fantasy VIII. And obviously I tried to go for less meta-relevant things, so more kind of wacky and weird combos, so they can be a bit out there. But anyway, yeah, if there's anything that you guys like me to cover, let me know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.